Chief Minister Adityanath expands his cabinet ahead of the UP Assembly elections, a delicate balancing act to include representation from across castes and communities. Former Congress leader Jitin Prasada gets cabinet post. Punjab's new Chief Minister gets his pick in an expanded cabinet, but it sparks resentment among those dropped and also over the return of a scandal-tainted MLA dropped earlier. The Chief Justice calls for 50% representation for women in the judiciary. Addressing women advocates of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice says, "It is your right." Mamata Banerjee hits out at the Modi government after they deny her permission to travel to attend an all-faith peace meeting in Rome. She calls it jealousy. And Cyclone Gulab, the landfall process begins. The Air Force Station Srinagar conducts an air show at the Dal Lake as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Hello and welcome. The top stories of the day. The Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister expanded his cabinet, with the former Congress leader Jitin Prasada being the most high-profile new face in the ruling BJP administration in the state. The expansion comes months before the assembly polls in this politically key state, and the newly inducted members have been chosen with that poll math in mind.
Well, so I think the most interesting thing about this cabinet expansion is that these newly inducted ministers will have just about 3 months to carry out any work, because after that the election code of conduct is going to kick in. Now, that's significant because it does indicate that this is hardly an administrative exercise but more political signaling by Yogi Adityanath. He's inducted 1 Brahmin, 3 people from other backward communities, 2 from scheduled castes and 1 person from a scheduled tribe into his cabinet, and he's clearly signaling to voters ahead of the election. Now, the most prominent induction is probably of Jitin Prasada, who was one of the Congress's top Brahmin faces in Uttar Pradesh, a former minister, a former MP, before he swapped parties, I think in June earlier this year. Now, of course, he's with the BJP, and Adityanath, the Chief Minister, and others in his party will hope that Mr. Prasada's induction in a likely cabinet rank will ensure that the party has some more influence over Brahmin voters, who are about 13% in UP. And there's this perception going around that this government is not so pro-Brahmin in that sense, and that's something that the opposition keeps on saying. So that image they will hope to correct. Beyond that, the other ministers have all said that they're going to make the most of all the available time that they have, etc., etc. One person who seems to have missed out is A.K. Sharma. Remember, he is a former high-profile bureaucrat, very close aide of the Prime Minister. He was sent here, he was made an MLC. Everyone said he's going to be made minister sooner or later. He's not here. He's in Raebareli, 80 kilometers away, addressing a meeting of intellectuals.
And 15 members were inducted into the new Punjab cabinet, 6 of them completely new and at least 1 returning to the ministerial position after 3 years. The move, coming months ahead of the state assembly polls, has already sparked resentment among those who were dropped, and also over the return of the scandal-tainted MLA dropped earlier. The 15 MLAs who took oath today: Abraham Mohindra, Manpreet Singh Badal, Tript Rajinder Singh Bajwa, Supinder Singh Sakaria, Rana Gurjeet Singh, Aruna Chaudhary, Raja Sultana, Bharat Bhushan Ashu, Vijayender Shingla, Randeep Singh Nabha, Rajkumar Verka, Sangat Singh Gilzian, Pargat Singh, Amrinder Singh Rajavaring, Gulkirat Singh Kohli, and of these, Mr. Nabha, Mr. Varka, Mr. Gilzian, Pargat Singh and Mr. Waring and Mr. Kohli are completely new to the job, while Rana Gurjeet Singh was part of the former Chief Minister Amrinder Singh's team earlier, but he was dropped in January 2018 over a sand mining scandal involving him and his family. He's among the richest MLAs of Punjab, and hours ahead of the swearing in, 6 MLAs wrote to the state Congress chief Najot Sidhu to protest the proposed inclusion of Mr. Singh in the new cabinet.
आशाएं हैं वो पूरी होंगी।
चुनौतियां भी देखते हैं सर, कोई चुनौती आप मानते हैं, कोई चुनौतियां भी आपके सामने हैं?
चुनौती मेरी ये है मेरे लिए ही है कि मैं दिन रात काम करूं। मैं अपने आप को चुनौती मान देता हूं, अपने आप को। मैं दिन रात लगकर जो काम है जनता के बीच जाऊंगा, जनता का आदमी हूं, जनता की सुनूंगा।
जो लोग मंत्रिमंडल में स्थान नहीं पा पाए हैं उनको पार्टी में और सरकार के सेटअप में, क्योंकि बहुत सारे काम होते हैं, उनको बहुत सारी जिम्मेदारियां सौंपी जाएगी। किसी को छोड़ा नहीं गया है, लेकिन नए लोगों को सम्मिलित करने के लिए, 7 नए लोगों को सम्मिलित करने के लिए और एक सामाजिक बैलेंस, क्षेत्रीय बैलेंस पैदा करने के लिए जो है ये सारी एक्सरसाइज हुई है।
देखो, जो सरकार के काम है उसको आगे बढ़ाना है और जो भी हमारे इश्यूज हैं उसको प्रॉपरली रिजॉल्व करवाना है। हमें अपने अपने मंत्रालय जो है उसके लिए जो बिल्कुल क्लीन और क्लियर कट जो है वो पॉलिसीज के ऊपर काम करना पड़ेगा और उनको लोगों तक पहुंचाना।
जो भी काम दिया जाएगा उसको ईमानदारी से निभाने की कोशिश करूंगा। लोग ये कहेंगे कि जो काम दिया था उसने ईमानदारी और निष्ठा के साथ पूरा किया। मुझे लगता है कोई चुनौती में नहीं है, बंदे में दम होना चाहिए। 6 दिन के अंदर एक नया इतिहास रच दिया चरणजीत सिंह चन्नी और सिद्धू साहब ने।
कांग्रेस पार्टी की जो हालात है वो हुण सेल्फ डिस्ट्रक्टिव हो गई है। इत्थे हुण धड़े डिवाइड, कांग्रेस इन्नी डिवाइड हो गई, हुण हिस्से वंडे गए हैं। मेरा ग्रुप आ करूगा, तेरा ग्रुप आ करूगा।
And the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has accused the Narendra Modi government of jealousy in refusing to let her go to Rome for an all-faith peace meeting. The MEA, she said, replied to her application for permission last evening, saying that the event was not, and I'm quoting here, not commensurate at your level of Chief Minister. The German Chancellor, the Italian Prime Minister and the Pope are among the invitees, she says. She's also questioned how the Prime Minister went to the US with the co-vaccine shots, which is not recognized by the WHO.
कोई लोग पहाड़ में नहीं जा सकता है कि कोवैक्सीन इज नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज्ड बाय द वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। लेकिन प्राइम मिनिस्टर चला गया स्पेशल परमिशन में। अगर जाने देता तो लोगों को मन में एक बात नहीं आता, दुख नहीं होता, लेकिन जाने नहीं देके आप जो किया है बराबर आप बेआईनी काम किया है, आप बेवजह किया है।
এক্সটার্নাল অ্যাফেয়ার্স মিনিস্ট্রি থেকে তা কেন দেওয়া হয়নি তার কারণও তাকে জানিয়ে দেওয়া হয়েছে। অতএব এক্সটার্নাল অ্যাফেয়ার্স মিনিস্ট্রি বা অন্যান্য যারা সংশ্লিষ্ট দপ্তর আছে তাদের আধিকারিক প্রেস বিবৃতি আপনারা দেখে নেবেন, সেখান থেকে জানতে পারবেন। এর মধ্যে পলিটিক্সের কোনো ব্যাপার নেই।
And Goa may be a small coastal state, but its politics is drawing political players from across the country. From the Aam Aadmi Party that rules Delhi to the Trinamool Congress that rules Bengal, they've all now expressed interest in Goa ahead of the elections next year. Now, while the Aam Aadmi Party has already kicked off its programs in Goa with the visit of the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal a few days ago, Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress now says that they will enter the state too. The Trinamool's National General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee has made it clear that along with Tripura and Assam, the party is taking Goa seriously as well. The senior Trinamool leader Derek O'Brien, along with his colleague Prasan Banerjee, visited Goa this week. Several Congress leaders are also believed to be in touch with the TMC on this, according to sources.
তৃণমূল কংগ্রেস শুধুমাত্র আজকে বাংলার মাটিতে সীমাবদ্ধ নয়, আমরা ত্রিপুরা ইতিমধ্যেই কাজ শুরু করে দিয়েছি। আসামে আমাদের কাজ শুরু হয়েছে। আগামী দিনে তৃণমূল কংগ্রেস গোয়াও যাচ্ছে, তৈরি থাকুন। আমরা রাজনৈতিকভাবে লড়াই করতে প্রস্তুত।
And the other big story of the day, the Chief Justice NV Ramana has called for 50% representation of women in the judiciary. Addressing women advocates of the Supreme Court, he said, "It is your right."
I want to remind all of you what Karl Marx said. Of course, this is a different context about workers. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. I will modify this. Women of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. In the entire country, our lower judiciary, I don't want to use the word of lower judiciary, but subordinate judges and all that, less than 30%. In high courts, women judges are 11.5. Supreme Court, after 4 judges out of 33, we are just around 11 or 12. Lawyers, 1.7 million advocates in the country, only 15% are women. This needs a urgent correction.
Justice B.V. Nagaratna will be India's first woman Chief Justice in 2027, and this is the first time she's spoken publicly since her elevation. The Justice Nagaratna was speaking at the same event where the Chief Justice addressed women advocates of the Supreme Court. She said it is time to break the glass ceiling. It is time for women to strive ahead.
Female judicial appointments, particularly at senior levels, can shift gender stereotypes, thereby changing attitudes and perceptions as to appropriate roles of men and women. Now, coming to women advocates, my advice is that you should involve yourselves in all branches of law and continuously strive to do better. I think the time has come to break the glass ceiling and for women to strive ahead.
Then we're going to go in for a short break, but after that, Cyclone Gulab's landfall process begins. We'll bring you all the details. Welcome back. The story that we're closely monitoring now. Cyclone Gulab has made landfall in the coastal regions of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha, and this is the second cyclone to hit Odisha in 4 months after Cyclone Yas in May. The Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik says that efforts are on to ensure that there are no casualties due to the cyclone in the 7 high risk districts. Saurav Gupta, my colleague, is monitoring the situation closely. Saurav, the next 2 hours are going to be crucial.
Absolutely. According to the Indian Meteorological Department, the cyclone has made landfall. It has hit the coast between Kalingapatnam in Andhra Pradesh and Gopalpur in Odisha. Now, of course, high-speed winds were experienced in several places like Gopalpur and also Srikakulam in Andhra Pradesh due to Cyclone Gulab, and the landfall process will take about 2 hours to complete. Now, the IMD had earlier issued a red alert for Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, and of course, several measures were taken. In fact, the Odisha Chief Minister held a meeting earlier in the day and deployed personnel to ensure that there's no loss of life. The ODRAF, or the Odisha Disaster Management Group, and also the NDRF has been put into action. Several teams have been placed at high-risk areas, especially coastal districts. In Odisha, it is the Ganjam and Gajapati districts that are at the most risk, because these are areas where the cyclone is likely to make landfall. Andhra Pradesh too is also going to bear the brunt of the cyclone, as the cyclone has made landfall between Gopalpur in Odisha and Kalingapatnam in Andhra Pradesh.